Record on la computadora. So George and Kyle, you guys were on here earlier.
Yeah, Kyle was.
Yeah.
He's gonna be joining both sessions every week. I'm holding him to that, and he's dragging me with him, and he's holding me to that.
You guys were just cursing each other out last time.
Well, maybe if George did the modules like you've asked.
Wow. You know what? Let me tell you. All right, I actually did it. All right, between that last session and this one, I actually finished it. Okay.
Boy, oh boy.
Shut your face, Kyle.
George found out if you just move the slider along the video, it just counts as you doing it. So.
Oh man! All right.
Shots fired.
So all right, let's do some quick introductions. I know you guys started off ahead of time. So my name is Omar Patel. I've been an instructor for Trilogy about 2.5 years. I've been a software engineer for about 8. Did biochem and poli-sci before that. That's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know, nerd shit. So let's then go to George.
Everyone, thank you. I am George. I have been working with Trilogy for about a year now. I feel like I've had every single job at Trilogy. What it seems like. I started off as a TA, did the whole AI thing, academic ops, and now I'm a enterprise curriculum engineer. So that's where I'm at now. I'm also a former bootcamp student, so took the long way around. And yeah, do I just popcorn it?
Yeah, you can hot dog it.
All right, cool. Let's hot dog it over to Kyle.
Hey, I'm Kyle. I work for Trilogy. Have now for just about half a year. Yeah, here to do this. Get ready. Like I said before, done some HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So I'm just looking to have some fun, do this, maybe learn a little bit. And yeah, I'll popcorn it over to next on my list, which is Ashley.
I am Ashley. I just graduated from college a year ago with a design degree, and Omar was my web teacher. One was one of my classmates, and I'm trying to get better at JavaScript, so here we are. Juan, go ahead.
Hi, I also graduated last year. Patel is one of my design web professors as well. I am a web developer for a company in Vegas, and that's about it. I'm here mostly just to update on any new types of more efficient ways to code HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, anything that makes me a better web dev. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Lauren.
Yo, what's up, folks? Trilogy admissions advisor. I'm just finding out about all of this. It's great to be a part of this. I studied network admin in the past, and I figured why not web development? You know, it could be a great intro to a great career path. So I'm here to learn, get some good feedback, and, you know, be a part of the whole shindig.
You want to hot dog it?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Do you want to hot dog it to someone else now? Thank you, Lauren.
Let's go to Alyssa.
Hey, I'm Alyssa. Been at Trilogy for 3 years, so I've been here for quite a bit. Yeah, I've been talking about code for so long in both admissions, and when I did student success, I finally decided, hey, maybe I should actually learn a little bit about it. So I'm going to hot dog it over to Enrique.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm Enrique. I'm the SSM for Mexico City. I've been working with Trilogy for the last 3 months. So I'm one of the new guys here. And actually I've been working with a lot of platforms and different systems, but I've never worked with anything like HTML or any other programming languages. So I expect to learn a lot and have fun with this.
Cool. Is there left? Is it
who's left? Jolanta? Are you there?
Yes, hi. I'm here. My name is Jolanta, and I graduated in project management And I have also previous project management experience. And now I just want to see this from the another side. And I want to learn a little bit about web development. So I'm here. Okay, and then last person, probably last, it's Lucas.
Hi, my name is Luke. I'm at Trilogy for like 1.5 years now, working on the Bootcamp Spot and other Salesforce integration and this product management side of things. So I'm excited to be here because I'm not programming at all, but I have some knowledge about it. So I just want to make my first website that I was planning to like outsource for some projects, but I'm going to do them by my own as part of this learning experience, which is exciting.
Excellent. Is there anyone left?
I think it's everyone.
That's everyone? Okay. All right. So the purpose of this is, at first, it was just like a couple people that wanted to learn programming from the beginning. And then I realized, like, there are more people who could join. And then just more people joined. So I decided, been teaching programming for about 4.5 years and figured that it would make sense to have a self-learning module rather than building something on my own. I am part of also, besides an instructor, I'm on the product development team as part of Trilogy. So I have done a lot of like the analytics stuff and everything on the academic side. And now I've switched over to product side. And just developing all that stuff on your own is super tedious and just requires so much maintenance and everything. So might as well use like a platform that I've known to have success in the past with a lot of students. So Team Treehouse is pretty good. I think I've seen as best introductory learning as a platform. So what we're going to do is go from beginning to end of web development, and we're going to assume that people are going to put in at least 5 hours a week. That's pretty much it. Just 5 hours a week, 5 hours a week on modules. You can go as ahead as you want, but basically this is more of like a discussion forum on the topics. I know that there's another one that starts at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for the East Coast people. So on their time, it's 8 p.m. And they do it a bit more structured where they actually go through everything. But I think that since that could be really redundant for a lot of people, and maybe just like, kind of boring or something, whereas for others it might be helpful, it might be more beneficial to just have a Q&A and discussion section. So I think that's what I'm going to start off with. So we can cover topics and discussions that weren't understood and needed clarification on the 5 hours of learning that you guys did this week. Oh, so that means people can ask questions now.
Okay, so I think I'm going to start. I actually not sure about this because I didn't understand the topic quite well. Mm-hmm. There's this thing called programming syntaxes. Is it really necessary to use all the tags and all the commands when you're programming like div or aside or?
Okay, so the question goes into what is semantic HTML, and do you necessarily need to use certain tags when you're using HTML? So first we get into the syntax of what a tag is. So let me just share my screen. Can everyone can everyone see my screen? All right, so no one's looking at my porn tabs. That's good. Okay.
Yes.
So we can go to JSBin. So over here we have a simple, and JSBin is just like one of the collaborative code editors that you can use. So it's a simple REPL environment, a read event print loop, right? So I can put something in here, like I can put like H1, I can put wieners, and I can just do that, and it shows up with wieners. Right. By the way, since this is not tied to Trilogy or anything, I'm just going to be wildly inappropriate because this is how I am. I'm just a child. It's not going to be like weird or racist or anything like that. It's just going to be like
Just go for it.
basically fifth grade humor, farts, wieners, and stuff like that. Okay. And that's what I'll use for examples. So this is a typical element. So this is an H1 element. This is called a header type element. Now, this is semantic because, at this point, this may or may not be what's called semantic. And semantic means that is the tag, in this case, the H1 tag, appropriate for the content that's within the tag. So the anatomy of an element comprises of several parts. So I'm going to actually call on one of my former students to say what the anatomy of an HTML tag consists of. So Juan, what are the different parts of an HTML element? And specifically this one.
I'm not actually sure how to answer it because it just seemed, I don't know, it's so simple that I don't know how to break it down even further. I mean,
okay. So
what exactly are you asking me?
Which one of these is the opening tag? Which one is the closing tag?
Oh, okay. Well, for every tag, you need your opening and closing tag. This is
does every tag need an opening and closing tag?
Well, some tags. Okay, majority of tags. And like an image tag, you don't necessarily need a closing tag, or will you ever use one?
So if I have an image tag like that, I would just have the source.
And then maybe like your alt, and but anyways, that's not the answer to his question. For answer your question, if you need to use articles and aside.
Well, that's not. I don't want to answer that question yet. I want to go more into the anatomy first.
Okay.
Yeah. So besides the opening closing tags, what else consists of an element?
I guess the property, would that be the proper term?
Nope.
Of it? Well,
so what is this in between?
The string? Or can I call that?
Is content.
Content? Okay.
Content.
It's the content of within the tag. And what else do you want me to say?
So content can also be...
I don't know where you're going with this.
So what I want to go into is like basic anatomy of an element. So just something simple. So like I can say this is also the content of this element, right? I can have elements within elements, and the content of this H1 element is a paragraph element. So I can say, right? Now, this isn't necessarily appropriate though, because we don't necessarily use an H1 to wrap our content around. So a better example of
wait, what do you mean wrap your content around?
Well, you would use a div or an article or something.
Okay. So when you're putting like elements within something to contain that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, if I have a div, so now the question is, when would I use an aside element? So that goes in the basic anatomy of an element, right? So opening tag, closing tag, or self-closing tag, and then content within the tags. That comprises the element. Now we have an opening and closing tag. Now this is a container type element. A container type element is used to position things around your application and semantically contain things, right? So in this example, this is just a basic container. A div is the most basic type of container element. So I can just put anything in here. I can say like, H1, hi y'all. And then I can have something like that, right? So this is somewhat okay, right? I have a container over here. This contains an H1, which is the title of this. So, okay, it's an appropriate header element. And then it contains some text. Okay, that's fine. Now, it might be better, though, if I had multiples of these. Like, let's say I had multiple elements like this throughout the application. Instead of just separating them via divs, semantically, meaning that with purpose, it would make more sense to then have them be sections. Now, the functionality, you'll notice, won't change as much. But the difference is mostly that now you know that these are different sections of a page. A div is used when you don't when you need something very generic to contain your elements in. But if you're separating the section, if you're separating the page into different sections, then you should use the section tag. If you have an element that's to the side, for example, let's say that you have something that's a little side tab, right? Like a little article within an article, right? Something like a New York Times would say. So you then use a side. Now, all of these can be interchangeable, right? You can use any of these and they would have the same functionality. But the difference is when someone else looks at this, they're able to parse through and determine what it is as a human being looking at the code and determining what its usage is. Not only that, but it's also used for SEO purposes to determine like what is the structure of the page and whatnot as well. But that's minor compared to page maintenance and over time, other people being able to maintain your code. And that's the purpose of semantic markup.
Omar, would you put like under the body, would you have all the sections and the aside inside of a div, or would that just be like unnecessary?
That would be unnecessary.
So like essentially with most web pages, they have like the container div, you know?
Yes. So the container div is very specific. A container div is specifically used in Bootstrap. If you're using Bootstrap, then you need the container in order to activate the grid style CSS.
Okay.
But that is very specific to Bootstrap.
Okay.
So excellent question so far. Let's go on to the next topic. So any other topics of discussion? I know that the topics that were covered were the basics of HTML and CSS. But again, I don't want to really go into the details if you guys already understand what was covered. I want this to be more for like a discussion section for some of the more difficult parts that you guys didn't understand. Even if you think like, oh, like maybe I'm stupid, maybe it's easy, it's okay, just ask it. As long as you tried the research on your own, you're like, this is where I was stuck. I don't get it. I might be stupid. I don't get it.
So, guys, I just want to put this out there. I literally found out about all of this today. I know I said that before, but I haven't really had a chance to begin any of the tutorials. So this really, for me, is just going to be a chance to listen to you all, to see what you all have come across, and then I'll definitely put in the work and, finish the beginning of the track, before our next Zoom session. Just FYI.
Okay. Yeah, and you might have like an additional 5 hours, so you have like 10 hours to catch up on then. So make sure you catch up as quickly as possible. But 10 hours even isn't that much. And honestly, in the beginning, it's not going to be too bad, just because we're going to be doing the front-end development track. George is really good with ties. So we have introduction to HTML and CSS, HTML basics. And what I'm doing is I'm just going off of the estimation that Team Treehouse gives, such that if it says this is going to take an estimated 5 hours, I will cover 5 hours of that. So the next track that's going to be covered is going to be like, oh, this takes an estimated 5 hours to do, so it's going to be the next 5 hours estimated by Team Treehouse to complete. Does that not make sense?
No, it does.
Okay. All right, so any more questions?
Hey, as I was going through it, the only thing that threw me off a tiny bit was the nav, is when to put a nav and how that kind of differs and why I would do that instead of a section.
So good question. So what is a nav? So nav is another semantic element. So a nav specifically refers to a navigation menu. So you might go online, you might see nav, and the first thing that pops up might be MDN or something, or it might be Bootstrap. But essentially what you want in your nav is anything that has to do with navigating through your application. So if I have a nav, this should be at the top. And this should contain any information related to home, about, login, log out, things like that. So if I have an example of a nav, it's actually perfect up here. We can see that this is actually a nav menu. you notice that this is very much semantically separated from the rest of the page. This section up here is its own section. And if we go like this, you'll notice that it's also mobile responsive. It has different views depending on what size screen it's in. So the nav allows you to traverse through your application easily. And so you'd have something that says like, okay, click on these and it'll perform actions generally throughout the rest of your application. And it stays pretty much static throughout your application, except when things are changing, meaning that if you're on a page, one of these sections might be highlighted or something like that. Does that make sense or does that not make sense?
No, that definitely makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Totally. I got a question. Can you have a second nav section, like in the bottom of the...
So, good question. Can you have a second nav section? Generally, you can have as many of these elements as possible, but best practices would dictate that you, instead of having something as a navigation menu at the bottom, there's specifically a footer element that's part of HTML5, and that means that you are, again, functionally, there's no difference. Functionally, it does the exact same thing as nav. However, when you look at the information inside of it, you'll say, oh, okay, as I'm going through the code, and let's say this is someone else's code, and God, I hope everyone here at Trilogy has been doing this if you guys are developing on the development teams, using semantic elements and all that stuff. Oh, I can say shit and all that shit, because none of this is tied to Trilogy. So everything should be in semantic elements, and all the and when I say semantic, representative of the information that is contained within it. Right. So all this should be footer information inside of here. All this should be navigation information.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Excellent question so far. And again, don't feel like, oh, I don't, I feel like I'm an idiot. This is for fun, so you guys can ask whatever you guys want. In relation to the course. Don't just be like, why is my life falling apart or something. Then you talk to George.
That would be fun as well. Okay, so can I ask? Okay, go ahead, Ashley. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask recommendation. So in the video they recommended Atom, but I don't know if I really like Atom as my text editor. I've tried Sublime. I don't know which one is the recommended. Is kind of like the best for a beginner.
Brackets.
Best for a beginner, actually.
I would say Sublime. Well, that was the most helpful for me.
Yeah, but VS Code, actually, we switched all of our editors at Trilogy to VS Code just because it has so many helpers now. I would actually suggest trying out VS Code. It's like the one Microsoft product that I really recommend.
Well, on Sublime, if you Google like plugins for Sublime are like the best ones to get. After I did that, now it works like a dream. And it's like so much easier to use. So I don't know if you would like want to look that up too. But I've never used VS Code.
Well, try out VS Code. I would suggest like VS Code just because the plugins are so easy to install. Like Sublime, it's still a little bit more difficult. Sublime is a little bit more outdated than how VS Code works. VS Code is constantly iterating. I would just suggest VS Code from the get-go. Not listen to Ashley whatsoever.
VS Code is.
I did not like Atom. Like I tried it and I'm like, this kind of stinks.
Yeah, I would just try VS Code. Just so if we're all in the same editor, then it makes it easier for us to debug as well and to help you guys out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is VS Code Visual Studio Code?
Correct. Visual Studio.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a free editor. And if you sign up for it, you get 3 months of Pluralsight for free, which is another module type thing for like Team Treehouse. I actually would not start that subscription until maybe about like 6 months into the program, because Pluralsight is mostly for like advanced videos and stuff. And we can use that at some point. I'm not tied completely to just one thing. But I don't want anyone to pay for it, any extra stuff. So if we did use it, we'd use it probably just for like the 3 months and then go back to like Team Treehouse or something. Because you can put like subscriptions on pause. So we can go to like I've used Pluralsight for like advanced stuff, like in like computer science things and stuff like that. A lot of good stuff on like algorithms and all that. But that's way down the line. All right, other questions?
Yeah, I got another one. I remember this because I think this is one of the first things that our students are taught in the first classes, or even in the first class, I think. How do you get, when you're using, for example, VS Code, how do you get to open a web page so you can see what you're coding?
Yeah, so let me open up VS Code right now. So
yeah, actually, because I'm asking because when while we are using Treehouse, it has its own
workspace.
How to call it? It's workspace. It's exactly. Thank you. So you don't have to use something extra, something additional from some other source or whatever.
Right. So if you're coding something, and you guys should be coding on your workspace, and then you should try to do it just from your own computer. So what you can do is your browser is actually its own program, and it renders your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in real time. So what you can do is open up any of those HTML files into your browser, and it should render the information inside of there. So for example, let's say I have a simple HTML file. For example, I'm going to save this. I'm just going to call it index.html. And I'll just say another good thing about VS Code. It comes with a lot of like helpers through Emmet. So I just created some stuff in there automatically. I'm just going to put, let's put each one, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now let's say that I want to run this in my browser, right? Well, all I do is open in default browser. There you go. Just like that.
You don't have that capability to do that on Sublime? You have to use like MAMP or something, or can you just drop in?
No, you can easily do it from Sublime. I'm just saying like the auto, a lot of these snippets that are built in and stuff. You can actually do everything you want in Sublime using VS Code, but a lot of stuff is just a lot simpler to do in VS Code. And installing things is like as simple as this Command-Shift-P and then just install everything. I mean, you can kind of do that in Sublime too. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, because I have like Emmet on there, and then I have this thing called Ghost Text, and that with that plugin, you can use like CodePen, and it automatically translates like from your text editor on your remote server to CodePen, like online, which is interesting.